then give Sarah a text. And if it's really bad, just tell me to stop. All right, welcome to class 2, everybody. You should all have your trays with your fired glass clay pieces. I think they turned out great. In the shrinkage, there was a little separation for some of the branches and the trunk, but that's okay. We can fix that as we go. So I want to go over the materials we're going to be using tonight. I'll try to hold this here and go over each one. We need our paints, our brushes, our cup for the water, for the paint water. You need a paper towel or some sort of napkin. I'm not sure what each location has. We're going to be using a paper plate for your palette. And you've got your fired clay pieces. Does everybody have their trays with their fired clay pieces? Thumbs up, please. Okay, and at the end, after we paint everything, we're either going to use E6000 or clear silicone caulking for our glue. And we will also be using these Roser pliers, which are found in your glass cutting kits. And this is just to bend the feet and the legs of your bugs. So I will leave this here. So everybody, please give me a thumbs up when you've got all your materials in front of you. And don't squirt any paint out yet.
Yeah. Ask them again for their thumbs up if they're ready.
Okay, thumbs up for everybody who's ready for instruction. Okay, yay. All right, first of all, we're going to turn this gray clay, and I just placed mine on the glass over my little sketch. Everybody should have their sketches back. So we're going to turn it into this. Now for the first technique, which is going to be to paint the trunk and the stick, I like to use this little flat brush. And it's fairly stiff too. I think y'all all have something like that, do you?
Yes.
Okay. Now about the paint, it doesn't take much. And I made my palette out of a little piece of glass. I put a pea size or less than a pea size of each color onto my palette. And I don't have access to the paint. So if y'all have all the materials in the middle of the tables, then just do one color at a time, since our air is dry, the paints dry out quickly.
But you want us to put it in.
Yes, let's start with putting a pea size white on your plate. We're going to start with the white first. All right, so I'm just going to place that there. The first thing I'm going to do with my brush is I'm going to dip it in the water just to make cleaning easier, and so that the paint doesn't dry and cake onto the brush and ruin it. And then I'm gonna blot it on a paper towel. I'm using a dry brush method. So instead of mixing my little dab of white paint with a lot of water, I have a dry brush. Not dry, but you know what I'm saying. It's not sopping wet. So I'm gonna take a little bit of white on the tip. Let's see if I'm trying to hold it sideways so that you can see what I'm doing. But what I'm holding the paintbrush flat side towards the tree trunk piece. So then when I brush it over, it does not get into the crevices because the bark has the black lines going around the trunk as well. So I'm trying to preserve our gray color to use instead of painting each line with black paint. Does that make sense? All right, if you feel good and ready, then give it a try. And don't worry if for some reason you have a big white blob on there and you got it into the crevice, don't worry, because in nature, things are not perfect either. And we'll use that in our design, in your design. This is one reason why the texture makes it so interesting, and it also makes it easier to get the effects with less work. Now, if it just seems too dry, it is okay to dip it in your water a little bit. I have my water just out of the screen, but that's what I did. Blot it again. There. And now that I've got my white on the higher part of the texture, I'm going to go in and just take some of that darkness out. There. Yes? No, I'm using that flat brush because I just want it to skate across the top texture, the very highest texture. See, can you see how the dark lines are still there? And that is just the clay, the glass clay. So once you like the look of your trunk, if you made some little branches, I'm going to do the same thing with my branch. Just make it skate across the top of the texture.
if you made a Christmas tree, should we do the Christmas tree?
Do you want to paint your Christmas tree white? Let's wait until after we finish
Okay,
the aspen and then we'll do the extra elements that you made.
okay.
Question,
Yeah.
do we go down the sides? Do we wrap it?
Yes, the question is, do you wrap it? And that is purely up to you.
Okay.
And there was also another reason why I put that down for just a minute, so I can handle it without it being too wet. So that's what I prefer, because you've got a clear glass base. And so yes, I do the sides and the black back. Just a scribble. And we're basically tinting and staining. We're not really doing thick paint. And the reason for that is glass and acrylic paints usually don't mix. You have to prime it or something to get paint to stick to glass. In this case, the clay has millions of air bubbles trapped in it, and that's why it turned gray instead of staying clear and white. It's the air bubbles that do that, but it's the air bubbles also that make it porous so that we can do some staining with the acrylic paint. Now, another method of doing this, which takes another series of firings, which we do not have time for, is to take powdered glass enamel paints and paint it with that. But this is just a method to get us used to this technique, and it serves its purpose, and I think it turns out pretty too. So anything goes with glass. Glass is a new art form, fused glass. It's only been around since the 1970s, even though stained glass and glass blowing has been around much longer. So it was only the 1970s that they actually figured out how to make colored glass compatible as they were manufacturing it, so that you could put it in a kiln, fire it, it all melts together, and then it doesn't crack and explode when you're cooling it down. So that was the key. And now we have this new art form, and it's almost like anything goes. Everybody's just making discoveries. It's really, really cool. All right, now I'm gonna clean my brush. And let's go ahead and whatever color leaves you want to make. Yellow, green, red, mix the yellow and the red together and get your orange. This is your choice, but I've got yellow and red. And again, I'm going to use the flat brush because I've got some lines on my leaves.
No, that's okay.
And this time, instead of leaving it dark, I'm going to pile the paint in there and actually put the red in those veins. But you can leave it dark too. This is your choice.
No, you have to do the other.
Yeah, if you want orange, you need to mix the red and the yellow. But let's see what happens when I do this. There we go. I didn't even have to mix the orange on my palette. I'm just using that flat side so I can preserve the red in the veins. And the yellow on top of the red makes the orange. I know that's tiny, tiny. Can y'all see that? So this is something else that demonstrates what I just did. And if you did something other than the tree, like a Christmas tree with any kind of texture on it, I actually put the yellow on first. And the yellow is in the crevices, same as where the black is and the gray is on my tree trunk. And then I went over it with red, just skating across the top with that red, so I could leave the yellow crevices exposed. And same thing with these leaves. I'm going to go through and paint the fronts, and then I can go back to the first one and paint the back. Am I giving y'all too many options?
Now, if I wanted like an ornament on the tree, I could put a blob of red on it.
Yes, if you want to add anything on top of their base color, that's
Okay.
very good.
Not a blob.
And I'm actually going to go back and add a little bit of black to my tree trunk in a minute after I finish these leaves, and make the eyes, define the eyes of the bark a little better.
Green. The red is so peaky.
So to me, this is not like painting a landscape or a still life. We're just having some good old crafty fun here. And it still blows my mind that we're painting on glass modeling clay. Okay, so I'm ready to go back and paint the backs and the sides of my leaves. So as you're painting these and they really start to pop, you can start thinking, is this a technique I would like to use in my lantern the last 4 classes? Or am I gonna like the next technique even more? And honestly, I like using a little bit of both techniques in my lanterns. Okay, so I've got a little dab of black, and I'm gonna go back and make my eye more defined. And I am not really following the lines. I'm just adding a eye shape here and there. And so many of the trees have the black socks on the bottom of them. I'm just gonna make mine a little bit black because I don't like that texture down there that much. Also gonna add a little dark to the stick. And some of the elements that you made, even though it turned gray, there were all different shades of gray. I don't have an answer for that, why that is, but they all seem to have the same strength. I fired them all at the same temperature. When I say strength, the same hardness after they were fired. Oh, so if you have one that the stick, you made it attached to the trunk and it pulled away, I'm sure that was in the shrinkage as the kiln was firing up and heating up. But we're just gonna glue it all back together on our glass base. And I don't remember whose did this, but their trunk had a crack in it and it separated. But feel free to nip there was a string of clay holding it together. Nip that off and then they should fit right back together nicely. Which you could do with these. You could just nip that edge off.
It is. Because you're looking at it and you're saying, wait.
How's everybody doing? Remember to preserve your texture with the paint. Make your top color just skate along the top instead of, don't try to get in the crevices, just make it skate along the top using that flat brush. And it actually works better when we use paints just to tint it instead of a thick coating, because when it does get to be a thick coating, then it can peel off, but the thin coatings will stay on really well. Are there any questions out there? Everybody doing great?
think they're doing well.
Okay.
Some green things.
Yes, there's some really. That's what you should do. See the orange fingers.
Yes. That's one of my favorite. They're between my phone and this iPhone.
I'm not rushing anybody. I'm just going to tell you what the rest of the class is what we're going to be doing. So we'll get to, if you made a bug, we'll paint that. If you made anything else, you can paint that. And then we will glue all of our elements onto our bases. And then I will give you a chance, if there's something you're thinking about wishing you had done, or your mind is just going crazy with exciting elements that you could try next time, or textures, then if we have enough time, I want you all to pull your clay back out and we'll just do another little something extra.
Here's a question.
Yes.
Which side should we glue on to, the flat or wavy?
Okay, which side should we glue on to, the flat or the wavy? I think it's better to glue the flat side down. And that's how I have it placed. So feel free to place it on your base after you're painting, as you're painting, and find the position of everything that you like. Because this is already dry enough to actually glue it, but we'll wait. I'll wait till everybody's done painting before we get to that process.
Which side of the piece of glass?
Oh, which side of the piece of glass? There's a, let me look.
Well, you don't want the.
Okay, there's a, where you have the hanger, there's an extra piece there. I consider that the back. So I'm gonna put that down on the tray, and then I'm gonna glue my elements onto the flat side. So that also works well if you want to put a leaf up there and cover that up.
Oh,
Anything else?
My tree trunk is longer than the glass.
That's okay. We have a tree trunk here that's longer than the glass base. And for this technique, that's fine, because this modeling clay has a lot of strength after it fires. So I'm not,
Oh,
if it gets banged up a little bit, I don't think it's gonna break.
I might have been on the wrong glass.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Well, there you go.
okay. So
I just thought, well, wow, you're just
most
so
of us are working with the
solid.
larger base for this, this aspen scene. But if you think that your tree trunk shrunk so much that it would look prettier on the smaller one, I actually did that at a couple, on the samples at a couple locations, because I made it super thin. So I just did it on the smaller one, but it's your choice.
Just know what you're doing. Is there more of a spring green or a green green?
Try for a spring green, try mixing a little bit of yellow with that green, or with black. Yellow and black make a nice green, but not a spring green.
So many Christmas trees.
Yes, that's perfect.
Ada, try mostly yellow with just a tiny,
Oh, yeah, it worked.
okay, good. Did you do mostly yellow or mostly green to get spring green?
I put in white, that green, and now I'm adding more and more yellow.
Okay, white and green and more yellow.
You need more yellow, otherwise it's kind of turns off.
Okay. Okay, again, not rushing, but I'm gonna go ahead and paint the rest of my bug before my paint dries up.
Put some white in the triangle, yeah. I use the smaller jar.
That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
The skinny one.
Oh, that's a good point. Our brilliant students are saying that for the black lines, they use the smaller brush. So that may be easier than what I showed you.
This is the green, yes, thank you.
Once I get going with one brush, I tend to forget to pick up a different kind and just keep going with it.
You guys should-
So y'all will be able to take these home tonight. And in future classes, if you want to look back on it for a technique you're trying, then you can just bring it back in, or for an idea.
So this is just regular acrylic.
Yes, this is just regular acrylic paint. And even though it's behaving a little differently than the paint I used at my house, it's still, to me, it's still working great.
You get it off.
Well, Peter seems to think so. That's maybe.
Did y'all want this one to look at? Are you good? This is the demo one I had for y'all.
They're very focused.
So the glue we're going to be using should be good for whether you want to hang this outdoors or in a window or use it as an ornament, wherever you want. Any other questions or comments or, yes?
Are we gonna have something at the base? The one one that's like gate?
Oh, the question is, are we gonna have anything at the base? On this one, I put some snow using our second technique on it. And if you want to bring it back next week and we can make that snow at the base or a little snow for the branch. But that will be next week's technique. And I'm actually gonna go over that a little bit before we leave tonight. Yes?
They also want to know how to apply the glue.
Okay. For those of you ready to use the glue, our choices tonight are E6000 or clear silicone. So my choice for the clay is just a couple dabs of E6000. And if you've taken any of my jewelry pendant classes, it's one of the more important steps. But with these, we're not going to be wearing it. I'm not going to worry about it falling off as much. So I say just use like a little dab of Elmer's glue. And I will go ahead and show you on the tree trunk. So the reason why I want to save this for the glass paste is because the glass paste, the sugar glass, is going to be much more delicate. So the silicone on the back of the glass paste is going to give it some strength. So I would prefer to save that. And I'm just going to use this like Elmer's. You don't need, this is an old tube, so it's going to fly out. But you just need a couple, not the whole thing, just a couple little spots. There's time to set it down, put the lid back on, because it doesn't start setting up immediately. It takes like 10 minutes. All right, I got my base down at the bottom. And it sticks like that. So just a few dots will do you.
Should we have finished painting the back of our leaves by now? You said we do need to paint the back, right?
If it's going to be in an area where it's turning around and you want to see the back through the clear back, yes. But just, it's not, I did not put as much, I just put a dab of color and scribbled it in.
That's fine, thank you.
I didn't try to make the back look pretty.
So it's in two pieces. Yeah. Yep. I just put the dab one.
Now, for those of you who have to share the glue, you can also put a dab on your parchment paper and then pass it on to the next person. And I would just use the tip of my brush as my tool to put a few drops.
Did you really? What do you do?
You should see our house, everything's glued down.
Yeah.
Oh, was. When the kids come over, they don't
There we go.
This is little tight tube. I told you about this big and
Yes.
falls open this drawer and he brings one out about as big as that water
Oh
bottle. He
my
goes, oh,
God.
you mean this?
Oh,
my-
he has one of those?
Yeah,
You
he
need
has
some?
a-
I just put it on it.
What kind of thing is this?
You can get it at the dollar store. They have that E6000.
Oh,
And then I'm gonna wipe off the glue from that end with my paper towel. And rinse out your brush with the water. And then you can move on and you can paint your bug. And if you've already done that, you can take these pliers and just bend the ends for feet. Bend it kind of in the middle for the knees. Like so. I just put little dots, like you don't have to do the entire trunk, just a dot. I put 3 dots, one at each end and one in the middle.
Okay.
So when we're making jewelry and gluing the bells on, you have to let it be exposed to the air for so many minutes to activate both sides, and then you put it together. It takes 72 hours to cure, but these are pretty much good to go now.
He's got one shorter leg.
That's it.
He lives alone.
Let's return to this. I didn't know it's a-
And I'm gonna clean up my paint and get that out of the way.
day. That's, you know, this is cool.
Yeah, go ahead and glue all of your pieces.
Oh. Your bud
To
is
your
so pretty.
base.
It has these wings. Maybe I should put
But I'm not
some-
gluing my bug to anything. These that I have the bent legs, I like to hang on my plants or just, but you can also save it for your lantern. I've got several on this lantern. And with the bugs, we can also use the glass paste. Our next technique we're going to learn next week to make pretty, not transparent, translucent wings.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's what I did on, there's a dragonfly and some sort of fly there. That's what I did. I did the clay on the body part and the wings I made out of the glass paste.
I'm sorry, Judy, what is the best glue to use, just the Elmer's?
No, I like the E6000. Elmer's works until it doesn't. Because I tried it and it worked for a few weeks and all of a sudden it popped off. But then I had, when I was making jewelry and I was stacking little tiny squares, I used Elmer's on it and I could not get them to come apart. I had to just hit a hammer and break it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it works until it doesn't.
Yeah, those dots have to dry.
Yeah, I just painted black on my bug, but oh my gosh, have fun with it with dots and eyes and mouths and
Focus light.
Come apart a little bit.
It just moves.
Oh, are the legs wobbling inside between the glass?
Yeah.
Did you try just putting a little spot of E6000 in there to, okay, that should work.
Did you need coke bill and the barge didn't have anyone?
I thought one did and one did not.
No, one of them was like that.
Oh, no, they're with Kemmerer.
Oh, they have.
I think so.
We just know a lot there.
I went to camera.
How did you fire their stuff from?
Missy drove them up to drop them off here. I pick them up here, take them to my house to fire in my kiln. I bring everything, repackage everything in the packaging. It came to me, bring it back here. And then don't y'all meet in the middle sometimes too? There's a lot of driving.
Someone picked it up, to get it back to
Yeah,
them.
that's nice, because it's so long.
Yeah, that's another reason why we come up with these projects, that we don't have to travel back and forth. So try to get away with as few firings in the kiln as possible and still come out with some great projects.
Like a year.
Yeah, like she needs another.
We just went to REI today.
Judy
You
Lamarche
watched their
just said
sale last year, you
they
bought.
have a huge community event. Thank you. See you next week.
Oh,
That's
thank
nice.
you.
I-
Glad y'all were here tonight.
It's so hard to go in your closet and you see things that. But you know, you live in this jacket. All the
Well, that's
time,
what I
all the
said,
time.
it'll never come
I
to
put a new
waste.
one this year too, I bought it last week, I thought, I'll read it. Oh, it's just nice to wear something.
Betsy, did you buy anything at REI? Because you can get 20% back
I just,
by Friday.
Oh, I can say
So
that
if
it's-
anybody's getting finished with all their painting and you're wanting something to do, I would really like for everybody to pull out their clay before you leave tonight, your little baggie of clay, and check it. Make sure it's the right amount of wetness, not too dry.
On those e-books.
If it is dry, we can just add a few drops of water.
I already bought them.
Just make sure that baggie is sealed up really well.
so I bought bindings and they said they weren't.
Make another little element if you're
So
that far ahead.
I mean, I bought the bindings that I shouldn't have. They were even cheaper.
Mhm. Because Peggy did it, and I got her another 10% and $100.
So now I bought 10%.
Yes.
How long before you can return, how long before you can't return things?
1 year.
Yeah, something.
Yes.
Well,
Ooh, that's pretty.
Don't know, he doesn't kill. He doesn't try to get it out. Weed spiders, no.
So for anybody who's not too busy right now, this is one that I made using both techniques. This is the clay, and another regret, I wish that I would have put a different kind of texture on top because it's just white. It's still pretty cool looking, but next one, I'm gonna put some texture on it. And this up here is the sugar glass, the glass paste. And that was really too little. I just wanted to show an example of, you can get too, if you're too detail oriented on that, it's just gonna break up. So when I switched to these larger ones, they just started coming out so much better and not breaking.
Do you do it by hand or do you have the stencil?
Yes, I actually cut my own little snowflakes,
Nice.
but I made them really simple, you know, that term KISS, keep it super simple.
Yes.
And even that's what I use for that. And even instead of cutting out those points, oops, sorry, I put a pretty piece of glass in there. And this is the process we're going to do next week. Oh, here's this, sorry, too close. But this is fiberboard. And you take your stencil, you put it on top, and then you use your X-Acto knife to cut out your shape. And then we take, well, I put the glass piece right on top of that. It's not like cutting through like we did with the modeling glass clay. We had to cut through in order for you to see through. But this one, I put the glass on first. All right, gonna do a little mini demonstration here. You see that? There you go. So there's my shape. We're gonna pretend I put a pretty piece of glass there. And then you just spoon it out like glitter art. And you get a nice, even thin layer. Pretend I did that. And then I'm gonna take my hairspray and spray it on top of that. And the hairspray is the glue for this project. So I'm gonna put another thin layer on top and spritz it again with the hairspray. And then I fire them in the kiln.
What happens to the board that it's on? Becomes part of it, or is it melt away?
It will, well, this actually fired once
That one's
and
the
it's
same.
flimsy, it bends. Whereas the board y'all will be working with, it's pretty stiff. I mean, I could break this, but it's definitely stiff. It will become super flexible. And sometimes when you peel it off the back after it's fired, it will peel off in layers and you cannot reuse it. But this particular one, it did beautifully and I could reuse it until it just disintegrates. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. And if you want to make some nice little snowflakes, remember they either need to fit on the lantern or on our bases